What's going on YouTube? This is Jonathan. Welcome to another Axis and Allies video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Axis and Allies 1942 Second Edition. More specifically, we're going to be looking at Germany's first turn. Now, my last video was on the Soviet Union, Russia's first turn, and what Russia does is going to have a significant impact on what the German player should do. Now, Russia has a few options. Some are better than others, but we're not going to assume anything except the absolute basics. We can assume, for example, that Russia is going to move this sub over here, combine it with the British fleet. We're also going to assume that at a minimum, Russia is going to attack, or the Soviet Union is going to attack West Russia. If they're smart, in my opinion, they're going to attack at least one other territory, more than likely Ukraine. Otherwise, they're just going to be hitting a bunch of infantry, either up here in Finland or down here in Belarusia, which they could do, but they aren't really going to be causing as much damage. So in my opinion, those aren't the better moves. They may not choose to attack anything else. But again, at a minimum, we're just going to assume at a basic level, they're at least going to attack West Russia. Now, Germany has a lot of things on its plate and a lot of things it needs to consider. First off, when it comes to your build, you need to consider the Japanese player as well as the Allies. Do you think the Allies are going to go for a Germany first strategy and all gang up on you? If so, then you might want to focus a little bit more on infantry and less on going offensive in the early rounds of the game. Now, that also requires that your Japanese ally be aggressive in moving against the Soviet Union in the east and into China and down into India, potentially helping you in Africa later. If you can't count on Japan to do that, then you really need to be gunning it to try and take Moscow as quickly as possible. Hopefully you're not in that position, because if Japan isn't moving and the Allies are all attacking you, it's extremely unlikely that you're going to win in that type of scenario. Possible, but extremely unlikely. So you've got to know what the Allies are planning, or have a general idea of it, and what Japan is planning. Now, if you played with the same people a number of times, chances are you can start to get a feel for where their priorities are. Is the US more likely to go after Japan? Is it more likely to play a supplementary force early on against you over in Europe? And you can get a feel for how aggressive the Japanese player is going to be. I strongly recommend that the Japanese player, not to get ahead of ourselves, but that they be as aggressive as possible without, of course, making any foolish moves. Even if the U.S. decides to go after Japan, it's going to have some production in Asia that it can call upon when the time comes for it to turn around and fight America. So I definitely encourage an aggressive Japan, which helps them over there, but it also helps Germany, because it means if all the Allies gang up on Germany, Germany can turtle, and it can even start doing that within the first turn or two if it's able to assess the situation well. And even if let's say the Allies don't all go after Germany, let's say the US goes after Japan, Germany then isn't pressured to make extreme moves that perhaps it wouldn't otherwise make. It doesn't have to commit itself to battles that probably won't go its way, and it hopes it rolls well. Or even 50-50 battles. It can play a little bit more cautiously and engage in more one-sided battles of its own choosing. So there's a lot of things to consider with Germany. You also, of course, need to handle Britain and Russia at the same time. So I recommend, at least on your first turn or two, getting a fighter along with whatever else you purchase. That fighter is going to be instrumental in dealing with England. It's good defense. either along the coast if England's going to make an amphibious assault, or in the east against the Soviet Union if you need it over there. It also, because of its range, allows you to attack all over your territory. You can, one turn, you can have it defending Western Europe. The next turn, depending on where the front is, you can have it flying over to fight the Soviets. You could have it defending in Germany, and do all sorts of things with it. So definitely recommend a fighter on the first turn. Now the Eastern Front is going to depend a lot on what Russia did. More than likely, like I said, it's going to attack West Russia, and if it commits tons of its all its tanks there, you want to destroy it. If at all possible, you want to take it back, destroy those tanks, put the Soviet Union out of commission. Now, if they attack Ukraine, then they're going to have some forces down here, and some offensive forces. You're going to want to take that back as well. And personally, I think that's a good move for the Soviets. So Germany should kind of have that in their mind before the game even starts. How am I going to counterattack there if that comes? But the good news is, if the Russian player bought all infantry, as Russian players tend to do, it means that once you destroy all that offense they sent forward, they're going to have their fighters, and that's about it. So you will actually be in a good position to take the initiative back along this front if you're able to destroy those tanks. Now, you're going to want to look carefully if the Soviets attacked West Russia and something else. Make sure that you distribute your forces appropriately. Make sure that you don't dump all of your offense in one location that is easily countered by the Soviets if they're positioned well for it. Just some things to keep in mind over there. Now, up here in the North Atlantic, we want to destroy as much of the British Navy as possible on the first turn. Yes, they're going to rebuild. Yes, eventually they will control the sea. There's nothing we can do about that. But if we can slow them down by a turn, 2 turns, maybe even 3 turns, it's going to put us in a very strong position in Eurasia over here. Now remember that we now have a cruiser over here. We got a cruiser and 2 subs that can hit this fleet. We also have a fighter up here. If it's not doing anything else, we may as well send it in. We've got our 2 subs here. Now this can get a little bit risky. In my opinion, it's worth it, though, to send these subs over here, try to destroy that navy, send some contingent of fighters here, maybe 2 fighters, so you've got 2 3s versus 1 3, to try and take out that cruiser. Move this fleet over here, load up troops, drop them off in Egypt, move these guys over as well, and this bomber can also get down here, send him in, send some fighter support here, try and clear out the entire British Navy in the first round, and take India. You do have the forces to do it. You do need to utilize your navy and your fighters to maximum effect. You may be down a fighter if Russia or the Soviet Union attacks Ukraine. Just make sure that you are using all of your fighters wherever, even if you send them into land combat. You do not want fighters going to waste. Never believe that just because you're attacking with enough to take a territory that you should let a fighter sit idle. As long as there's no anti-aircraft gun involved, you might as well send it in. Maybe you can take the territory in 1 fewer rounds of combat, and it's going to save you some casualties. So you want to always use everything to maximum effect when it comes to Germany. So at the end of this turn, we should have Egypt. We should have cleared out the entire British Navy. Because we have Egypt, England can't send its fleet through the Suez Canal on this turn. The road is open for a turn or so to have our tank blitz down into Africa to start taking territories. Assuming that we survived the Suez battle, which we should, and dropped off the troops, now we have a coastal bombardment and a transport. We can load guys up in southern Europe, We can either shovel more down into Africa, we can hit Transjordan, we can use it in a counterattack against Ukraine if we really need to. We'd also use it in an attack against Caucasus. So having a few turns with that battleship and transport down here gives us a whole lot of leverage. A whole lot of possibilities are open when we have that. And then for the next turn or so, we'll just use what fleet remains up here, both that came from over here and down here, to threaten the British Navy, try and consolidate it as much as possible so that it's harder to destroy, and maybe we can wipe out a second round of British ships if they're not paying too much attention. Another possibility, thing that we can do, Russia is likely to leave Leningrad up here relatively defenseless on its turn. We can always march infantry across from Finland, assuming they didn't take it. If they did, then we'll be marching from Norway into Finland to try and take it back. Now, we've got this transport here that isn't really doing a whole lot. Now, if we need more troops up in the north, we can just use it to ferry some troops from Germany up to Leningrad or Finland. Now, it is likely to come under British attack on their turn, because if we move our fleet out here, there will be no surface ships protecting it. And I mean, that's really something to think about, because on the one hand, yes, we're losing the transport. On the other hand, it's not going to do us any good out here. And if England decides they still have to send something, even if, it's just one fighter over here to take it out, and that's one less fighter they can send to try and destroy our Navy on their first turn. So it's debatable, maybe it's worth it. I don't really like just leaving transports out to die, but again, if it prevents England from taking control of the sea for one more round, then leaving it there and letting it die is worth far more than keeping it alive and England getting a navy, on its second turn. So those are just some things to consider. As Germany, there is quite a bit. I could go on and on for quite some time, but those are the basics, the things that I would keep in mind. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to give it a thumbs up if you did. If you have any questions, comments, different strategies you'd like me to take a look at, questions about the things I outlined in this video, feel free to leave a comment. I'd appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the video.